Hello. Welcome to the Community Homeworks Workshop this evening. We're so glad that you're joining us tonight. My name is Tiana Harrison, and I'm the Education and Volunteer Coordinator at Community Homeworks. If you're watching this live, please feel free to comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you would like to join in on the discussion or ask questions, please put that in the comment section as well. If you're watching this after the live broadcast, we're still happy to hear from you. It just may take us a little longer to answer your questions. Community Homeworks is a nonprofit organization with the mission to empower homeowners to sustain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. We get to maintain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. We get our fundings from grants, gifts, and donations. So if you find value in this workshop tonight, we encourage you to donate on our website at communityhomeworks.org. Tonight's workshop is titled Plumbing Systems. And of course, our instructor is none other than the magnificent Mr. Lee Taylor. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to learning more about plumbing systems.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. It is good to see real people in the audience. So that's really nice. Um, Again, I usually start out with asking if anybody has any specific questions that they're looking to answer with this class. Does anybody have any? No? Older homes, most of you? No? Well, let's go through it real quick. Roughly, how old your house, you think? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yours? 20? Okay. You know how old yours is? 60? Okay. 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 All right. So we got a good range. So that's good. Um, so yeah, this is, like I said, plumbing systems. This is just a introductory, basics. It's actually been split up into some other classes. So some of the stuff we're going to be touching on tonight, we'll just be brushing over it because, like the toilet, that evolved into a whole class on its own. So we'll talk about it, but we won't get into that depth of it. So what we're going to be talking about is just identifying, the different components of the plumbing system in your house. What types of pipes are used in the home, what you might see, or a mix. Um, we'll talk about, energy efficiency with wrapping pipes and whatnot. We'll touch on the toilet, but we're not going to get into the whole thing. We'll talk about valves. We'll talk about drain lines, um, sinks, faucets, shower heads, that sort of stuff. Anybody have sump pumps in their basement? Okay. Effluent pumps? You know what a fluid pump is? It's a toilet that's hooked up to it. It pumps out a lot of solids instead of just water. So, okay, that's good to know. Yeah, we'll talk about different. If we have time, we'll get into the different filtration systems, hard water, that sort of stuff. So, this class is related to a lot of other classes. So, I'm not even getting into all that. You can follow along if you want in your outline. We'll talk about just the common types of water supply lines that you're going to find in your house. I'm sure most people see the galvanized pipes. Like you said, these are generally they've been around for a long time. The issue with these is that, especially like on elbows and whatnot, they start to corrode and they start to get a line build up on the inside and slowly close up, and they can get pinhole leaks and everything else. But yeah, generally these galvanized water lines, you'll see those quite often. Copper lines are another one where, like I said, the most houses, I think in the 50s, they started using these. So copper lines are pretty common also. What's actually becoming more common is what are called PEX lines, and these are PEX lines. So a couple of different varieties out there. Some of the older ones, or when they first started coming out, they have what are called, crimp style. So you see this metal band, and that's how they'll hook on elbows or whatever else. We're into PEX A now. So they have a PEX now that has a tool that goes inside and expands it out, and then you put in your fitting in and whatnot, and then it closes back around it. So, like I said, a lot of different styles of PEX. Most plumbers are probably going to be using this. So if you have a repair or something along that line, PEX is great because it's simple to run. You're not having to cut and thread pipes like you would do with the galvanized, or sweat pipes like you would with the copper lines and stuff. So with the PEX, like I said, it comes in all different sizes, 1/2 inch, 3/4. They can actually plumb a house out pretty quick, even in an existing home. So a lot of times when they're coming to do repairs or something along that line, they're going to be using what's called PEX. So, and like I said, if you guys have questions, please ask. Yeah. Yep. No, they don't. There's certain fittings that they can use. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. She was asking if you have, say, galvanized lines or copper lines, does the whole system have to be changed over to PEX if they're doing a repair? And the answer is no. As long as the system's in good shape, they don't want to connect to a corroded or whatever. But yeah, they have means to be able to put in PEX from that point. So, like I said, PEX is great. The main reason I like it, and a lot of plumbers like it, is it's fast. And it comes in, big old spools, and you can roll it out, and you can weasel it in between, up to the second floor and stuff like that. So they can do quite a bit with those. One thing that's related to your water supply lines are some of the other lines that you're going to see in your basement or something along that line. You're going to see black pipe. Technically, black pipe is for natural gas, not water. That doesn't mean I haven't seen people use it for water. It's not really rated for that. So black pipe is for natural gas. So just bring that one up. It's one of those things that if you ever need to cut a line or something like that, want to cut that one.
Do copper lines corrode, or don't you have to worry about that with copper?
They don't necessarily corrode. You can get a little bit of corrosion with them, I guess, depending on the water. You can get the buildup on the inside. We're going to talk about hard water. Here in Kalamazoo, it's pretty prevalent. But copper is pretty durable. But again, it's the cost that is going up and up and up for just the raw material. And then, the cost for someone to have to either sweat those lines or, good segue into this, use what's called a SharkBite is a brand name. All right. So let's say you have copper line, right? And you want to do something where you switch over to PEX or something. They have fittings that, and this is just a T fitting, and they have different sizes. And what it is, I'll show you guys. I'll pass this guy around. If you look inside there, it has a bunch of little teeth. And they're designed to be able to be pushed onto, say, the copper line, and then pushed onto your PEX line or something along that line. So that's how they'll change the different styles. You can also do repairs with them. Like I said, SharkBite is a brand. They have all different varieties out there. And it makes kind of home use. It makes it really nice. And I'll talk about some other features of that too. I will say this. if you've ever had, or if you ever think about using something like that, I'm a little leery of some of the lesser expensive brands. And the reason is that, again, when you look inside there, you're going to see all those little teeth. And if you look at a good one, it has a whole bunch of teeth. When you look at a cheaper one, it has less teeth in there. And there was an issue one time where we had to cut a line and put a cap on it and then turn the water back on. And we had one that was cheapy brand and one that was, a little more expensive. And guess which one went and shot that cap up to the ceiling and water went. So, some people are a little leery of them. I guess they've been rated to be buried behind the wall. I'm a little bit nervous about that still, but again, that's my personal preference. So, if you do use that that shark bite style fitting, you're gonna see it has this little piece right here, and they come with what looks like a C. It's a plastic C, and whether it's 1/2 inch or 3/4. And what that's designed to do is fit around the pipe and press down on this black part right here so that you can release that pipe. Trick is that if you go find them, and I'll pass this guy around too. If you go out and buy those fittings, make sure it has that piece in there because a lot of people lose it and they'll go to the store and they'll open up the package and take that little piece and leave this. So anytime I'm doing it, if I'm setting it up or something along that line, I'll just crimp it right onto the pipe and just leave it there. It makes it so that later, for some reason, you have to remove it. You can do it. I mean, yes, you can do it with tools, but it's kind of a pain. So, see, I knew I was going to be throwing stuff tonight. Anyways, other types of water supply lines. So we're talking, this is water coming in from, the road. You have your main meter, your water meter, and this is an old one right here. And again, like we said before, and rusty. Like we said before in other classes, the meter itself belongs to the water company, and everything out to the road belongs to the water company. Anything past the meter is the homeowner's responsibility, as a general rule. Most of you have basements, I imagine. No one on a slab or crawl space. Sometimes these meters in houses that are either on a slab or a crawl space, they have the meter out in the yard. They have a meter pit. It looks like a manhole cover, right? And it drives me nuts because what will happen a lot of times is, plumbers from way back when, they're like, oh, if they have an issue, they can turn it off at the meter. Well, think about it. If you have 3 feet of snow, and meanwhile your house is spewing, you're like, So, usually I'll tell people if they have a meter like that, one of the things they're going to want to do is, if they don't have a main turnoff in their house, they're going to want to get that in, because like I said, the water line will come in, copper line or whatever, and then pop up in the house. And generally there should be some kind of a turnoff there so that you're not having to try to find that meter pit out in the yard. Speaking of turnoffs, a couple of different styles of turnoffs out there. So you have, I'm going to set this guy down here. Yeah. You have this one. This is not quite right, but I'm just using it as an example. This is what's called a gate style valve, right? So you turn, right? And then you're able to turn that water off. These are notorious for getting crud built up in them and whatnot. You can actually see how this action works. If you have one of these as a turnoff, I would highly suggest that by hand, you see if you can actually turn that valve. Because a lot of times what happens is it totally seizes up. And In an emergency, if you need to be able to shut that water off, you can't turn it. So, and it doesn't quite look like this, but it has that style, and they can be different styles. So I'll pass this guy around here. Sometimes you see these like on laundry supply lines or just regular turnoffs. So let's pass that guy around. The other style that I like, and if you're having to have a plumber come out, say, and I'm going to trip over these things, I know it, and put in a turnoff for whatever reason, whether it's damaged or something along that line. Ask them if they can do what's called a ball valve, and that's what this is. So inside, it's just a quarter turn, shuts that water off real quick, real easy. I imagine they could seize, but I haven't found one yet that has. And again, they seal off real good. So if you're having to have a turnoff and you have a choice, ask for a ball valve. I mean, they come in all different sizes and everything else. The thing with these style valves, they have a handle, and you'll see this in a lot of different things. If it's in line with the pipe, means it's open. If it's parallel against pipe like that, means it's shut off. Simple enough. So I'll pass that guy around so you can see that. Yeah, those the turnoff valves, like I said, over time, those turnoff valves, they, the good old term, use it or lose it sort of thing. And if you don't operate those valves, there's a really good chance that when you need them to shut off, they're just not. They're not going to move. They're not going to do anything. And I'm talking about any kind of valve, whether it's ball valve or gate valve, or even your turnoff valves that you have sitting in front of you. A lot of people here. These are just mini ball valves. They're called quarter turn supply line valves versus a gate style valve like this, where you're having to turn, right? So you're going to see these underneath your kitchen sink, underneath your toilet, underneath your bathroom sink, that sort of stuff, right? And it's one of those things that you want to put in kind of your yearly sort of check would be to actually physically turn those. And the reason is again, you don't want them to seize up. So, like underneath the kitchen sink, you should be able to turn them. But again, too, sometimes they do not want to turn, especially the gate style valves. And I imagine that you're probably seeing a variety of these. The ball valve is called a quarter turn valve. It only turns a quarter. But a lot of times, let's say you're trying to do something like change your faucet or something along that line, and you need to shut the water off. Good luck. So by operating those at least once a year, it just makes them so they stay operational. And it makes it so that, never ever take a tool and try to reef on those. You will break it and you'll have a mess. And you better know where your main turnoff is. So back to that ball valve, that I was talking about, ahead of your meter, make sure you know where that main shutoff is. It's going to shut off all the water to your house. Whether it's an emergency or whether it's you got a grouchy valve that you can't change your faucet out because you can't turn the water off, right? And they sell those valves. So let's say we have that scenario, right? So let's say you have copper lines, right? And let's say your valve is shot and you want to put on a new valve. So you go turn off the water. You open up your lines, usually the lowest one in the house, so it drains water out. Get your rag and wrap it around. We don't have a cutter, do we? That was what you were asking me about. Anyways, there's what's called a pipe cutter. And they have little minis, or they have bigger ones that will cut like copper pipe, and it's got a wheel. And what you do is you put it on, clamp it down a little bit, and spin it, turn it, and spin it, and turn it. And what it does is it makes a nice clean cut through that copper line. If you're cutting, say, like PEX or something along that line, you can rent a tool that's similar to this, where it just ratchets and will slowly cut that. I don't usually pass this around. I'm gonna call you Stumpy. So all sorts of ways to be able to do that, but they sell that push on style in that turnoff valve. So it's really nice because you cut it, you clean it up a little bit with some sandpaper or something along that line, and then you get that valve and you press it on to whatever pipe it is that you're putting it on. And they'll say, suitable for PEX, copper. I'm not sure if they're suitable for galvanized. I don't think they are. But the biggest thing with those push-on style valves, you want to make sure it's fully engaged. And you'll see this too. It has these little pieces on the inside here, and you want to make sure that gets put in. And let's see if I can actually. So with this one here, we're going to imagine this is a valve. I'm just going to, ooh, that's small. Nope, not going to do that one. Never mind. So that's 3/4 line. Too small. But yeah, you just press it right on and you're good. So the turn-off valves, like I said, all different styles, all different types, whether they're straight or 90 or whatever. But if you're buying them, I would highly suggest buying the quarter turn style. They just make life a lot easier to be able to access that later if you need to. Question? Mm-hmm. They'd have to shut it off. So there's what's out in the road, near the road. Oh, sorry. The question is if you want to replace your main turnoff for your house, how do you do that without, having water spew everywhere? There is out in the road, near the road, there's a little, you call them Ford boxes. There's a little box and has a special nut. You take it off and it's, there's a valve way down there and you need what's called a turnoff, a T. Thing's usually about that tall, right? Put it down there and you find that and that's how they shut your water off and you don't pay your bill, right? So it's that's the way to be able to do that. Yeah, yep, the plumber could do that. Yeah. I mean, you could buy those at home centers too. Usually the biggest issue is getting into that Ford box because it's an odd shaped nut, but they do sell those those to be able to do that. And I know people that have those, so they sell them. So I guess it would depend on where you live, but in a pinch.
So once you shut the water off
Yep.
with the main,
Yep.
how do you drain the water that's in your house already?
Again, you're just going to have to find the lowest. Oh, I'm sorry. Question was, once you shut off your water, how do you get the water out of your lines? They're going to have a certain amount of pressure in there already. So if you open up your water lines, especially the lowest ones, it's going to drain out most of it. If you're cutting into a line, yeah, you're going to have water in there. So it's one of those things, have a rag or multiple rags. I usually tie it around the base and stuff when I'm getting the cut. You'll have water, but it's usually just residue that's left in the line. So yeah, those supply turnoffs like that are really nice. You want to make sure that they're working good because I've seen it where something simple as changing out a faucet turns into a very expensive mess where plumbers having to come out at, I don't even know what they're running now, 160 an hour or something like that. So then you have you're going to have supply lines from your turnoffs, and I don't care if it's a toilet or sink, doesn't really matter, from your turnoffs up to your faucet or toilet or whatever. couple of different styles there. You may have too many things in your hands. You may have copper tubing, where they can bend it and shape it and whatnot. And it's just, simple tubing that has been used for quite a while. Usually it's what's called a compression style. And it's a compression style because see that little piece around there, and then this fits in. You can tell that these are compression styles too, because when you open this up, there's that piece. Not a huge fan of compressions. Some people like them, but so you may have some kind of tubing running up. The other thing you may have is same concept, but it's just a plastic line, right? And it's still a compression. You got that little compression ring on there. And this is the part that actually fits up against fits up against your faucet and whatnot. Kind of the next generation of supply lines were these styles, and these are kind of a braided plastic. These are pretty good. There's one that's a little step up that I like, but I like these because you don't need to put Teflon tape or anything like that, because they have these rubber fittings in there, and you're not having to put that on and then trying to seal that water up. So they have supply lines like this. I've seen those fail occasionally. They get too much pressure on them, or they just get kinked or something like that, and they start leaking. The next step would be, and this is a toilet supply, pretty much just like that one, but it's got a metal braided, and you can actually, let's say it's exposed or something like this, you can actually get like gold one or whatever color, right? Pedestal sink style, that sort of stuff. But these are nice because, again, they have that rubber seal. You're not having to use the Teflon tape or paste. Come in all different lengths, different sizes. This is a style for a toilet. And then you have your various sizes as far as what it's going to hook up to with your turnoff. So that's the thing. If you're buying a supply line, you want to know what size that is. And there's generally just 2 or 3 different sizes. These are nice because, they don't kink. Like go like that, and they don't kink very easily. And they last quite a while. I'll pass that guy around. On that note, how many of you have a washing machine at home? Most people have a washing machine. Washing machine? Yeah. Got hoses that look like this? If you read your instructions on your washing machine, what they say is that technically what you're supposed to do is shut it off so that these aren't under pressure, under constant pressure. What happens over time, I remember this at my grandma's house because I'd walk down there and I'd poke at it. They start to bulge right where they connect up to that valve. That probably doesn't work either, right? And what can happen is these can rupture. And they'll sit there in their basement and just spew water everywhere. So they sell these in that braided form. So usually when I tell go home, check it out, either where it's connected to the washing machine or where it's connected to the valve. If this is starting to puff up, you want to get that changed. And if you're going to do that, go ahead and use that braided. There are a little more, but again, it's that peace of mind sort of stuff that makes life easier. That's a good question because I haven't seen one that was worn out yet. So that would be maybe somebody out there in the world can let us know. So because I haven't run into one that's worn out. I imagine they would. Everything wears out, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Correct. Right. You don't want to use. Yeah, the question was when you get a new, say, wash machine or something like that, they want you to put in new hoses, and yes, that's usually the case because they know that a lot of times the old ones can be failing. So most of the time when you buy them, though, they're going to be that rubber, one blue, one red, something like that. But they're still rubber. You can get what's called a flood safe. So what this is it connects. It sometimes it's built in, sometimes it's connected. Basically, what it does is it senses how much water's going through it, and if it senses too much water's going through it, it shuts itself off. So if you have a burst line or something like that, and they even sell them for connections to these. You know, I have a toilet that I popped one in because we have finished basement underneath it, and I don't want to leak, so I put that in. They're nice. They can be a little quirky occasionally. The issue we have with ours is if for some reason I have to shut the water off and I shut it off too fast or I turn it on too fast, what happens is that water comes up and it's a water shock and it hits that turn off and it shuts it off. And all of a sudden the toilet's not working. It's like, oh yeah, I got to go there and put a rag underneath it and just crack it a little bit to release the pressure off it and then let that valve close down again or open up again. So, but they have those flood safe valves out there too. So, I mean, if you have that issue where you're trying to control as much as you possibly can as far as potential water damage, might be something to think about. So, is there any questions up to this point yet? No? All right.
I have a question, Lee.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Teflon tape or paste.
Yep.
Do you have a preference? And should
I do.
we use one in one application and one in the other
Yeah.
application?
So the question was, I was talking about Teflon tape or paste. And do I have a preference? Oh, yeah, I have a preference. Paste is a lot easier. So I'll show you why. It's funny you asked that because I was just getting to that point. So Teflon tape or paste is for threaded style, right? So when you get the tape real thin, right, and you wrap it on there, I'm going to show you why I don't like this stuff. It does that. There it goes. And it doesn't want to stay. I proved my point, right? It's a pain. No. But anyways, you wrap it around like that. But the issue is that you all heard of that righty-tighty, lefty-loosey? When you wrap, if you're using tape, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just kind of a pain occasionally. You have to wrap it in a certain direction because, right, when you go to tighten it, you don't want it unraveling itself. Versus the paste, I can get a little tube, and it stays good for a long time. And I can just have that in my toolbox and smear it into the threads and go ahead and put it in. If you're using that paste, you want to make sure it's rated for whatever it is. Most of the paste these days, the Teflon paste and stuff, are good for natural gas and propane and water, and it'll say. And it's all listed out. So, but that's basically, I'm just lazy. I want something that I can just smear on and go. So, yeah, that's the difference with Teflon tape versus the paste. Nothing wrong if you have this, just make sure you're wrapping it in the correct way. And sometimes when you're upside down and, you know, underneath the sink, you're going, which way does it go? So it can drive you a little nuts. But, yeah, that's the difference with those. Oh, there it is. And I always lose this part. And then it comes unraveled in my toolbox. All right. So we talked about the water supply lines coming in, whatnot. Faucets, whether they're kitchen faucets, bathroom faucets, anything along that line. More often than not, if let's say you have a drip, you can replace the valves inside. All different style of valves. So if you're having that issue, whether it's a single handle like this or double or whatever, they're all relatively similar. I think they have some pictures of them in here. This one is actually from single handled like kitchen faucet, right? This one is, yeah, hard to see. This is another one. So you said these valves. A lot of times when you're looking for those, they're going to have some kind of a cap covering them up. So you get in there, and you can pop that cap off half the time, maybe. Yeah, sure you can, if they're not totally corroded. You can pop this cap off, and then there's a screw in there, usually a Phillips. You can unscrew it and pull that whole valve out, if you're lucky. The issue with that is that we're talking about hard water, calcium buildup, lime buildup, all that sort of stuff. Sometimes it can make it almost impossible to be able to pull that valve out. Here's another style here. This is one for the tub shower. This one. So this is like a single-handled tub shower, right? I can pull this off. Obviously, I've turned off the water. Don't make that mistake. And yeah, pull that out. And then that's the valve. The body stays. The thing is, if you're going to be trying to do that, you can YouTube it also. And I think we have a class where we actually get into this a little bit more. The best thing you can do is, one, I'll pass that guy around. Know what kind of brand of faucet you have. A lot of times it's going to be marked on here. Usually they're marked in the front. Here's another one. I'll put it right next to you. So this one here, yeah, see, it's not marked. But a lot of times they're going to have their brand name because that's what they're going to be asking you. Is it a Delta? Is it a, what is it, right, Moen? Whatever. Yeah. Oh, it's hard to say, but usually it's on there. So you're going to want to know that. With this style here, you're going to need a little Allen wrench. Of course, I can't get this off. But there's a little set screw underneath there. This handle pops off, and then you see this threaded part here. You can grab a pair of pliers and gently unscrew it, and you'll be able to get that valve pulled in. So they're usually not that difficult. It can be a little bit of a pain sometimes to find them. So there are valves out there, or there are faucets out there that you can't buy the valves for. Usually they're the really inexpensive ones, and they're just designed when they go, you're replacing the whole faucet. So on that note, if I'm buying a kitchen faucet or bathroom faucet or whatever, I'm going to buy one that is a well-known brand, Delta, Moen, whatever, something along that line. The reason is that I can find the valves. When you get some strange off-brand, it's kind of like, okay, you might be able to find them, you might not. So, and a lot of times too, this is personal preference. A lot of times, whether plumbers or do-it-yourselfers have certain brands that they like for that reason. Just easy to be able to pull apart, that sort of stuff. So, we got time for a quick funny story. Talking about valves, right? So, my wife's gonna laugh at this one. So we have a kitchen sink, right? And turn on the cold and it runs fine. Turn on the hot and it's like barely coming out. And I'm like, what's going on? So I'm like, it's something with the valve. So I pulled it out and stuff. And if you looked at that one as it was going around, you saw they had those deep holes, drilled into that brass. And I looked down there, and there's this little pebble that's sitting in the bottom of it. And I'm like, what a pain. And that was enough to disrupt the water flow on the hot side. And I'm getting tweezers. And I'm trying to reach down in there, and I'm working on it like for a half hour, right? And my wife walks up, and she has a drink with a straw. And she's like, move over. And she sucked the rock out. And I'm like, thanks. So, anyways, sometimes things get in there. So, I mean, it's just, it's just sometimes that's the case. So, but like I said, changing out a faucet or anything along that line, once you get used to it, you can knock them out in usually about half hour ish, depending. So, the biggest thing is that like I said, make sure you turn offs, because sometimes frustration can set in and you need to walk away. You need to be able to shut off the water, at least at that point, and be able to have water for the rest of your house. So keep that one in mind if you have never done it before. So, but yeah, changing those out, all different style valves. Does anybody have the old style tub where it has, I think it has a picture of it in here, actually. See how often I look at this. Yep, and you can see this too, where it's showing the different valves and whatnot. There is this style on page 7, and these valves on this one up top, yeah, those are for the older style tubs and whatnot. Those require a certain tool to be able to get those valves out. Yeah, and I mean, you can buy them, pretty easily. They come in all different sizes. They look like a socket almost. Stick, put it in there, stick your screwdriver in it, and be able to unscrew those valves. And those valves are actually pretty long. They're like this, and they have a threaded part and whatnot. So, that's about the only one that you would need some kind of a special tool for. You may have a picture of that on the back. Yeah. No. Pipe cutter's there, though. So, but yeah, if you have that style, you can buy those for pretty inexpensive to be able to pull those style valves out. I'll set this down over here. So, any questions as far as water coming into the house? Pretty straightforward most of the time. Now we're going to talk about your drain lines. So, good old drain lines here. Whether they're PVC or they're metal. Sometimes they're metal. P-trap, right? So, metal can corrode out pretty easily. Generally, some people really like these, but generally, if they're going to get changed over, they get changed over to some kind of a PVC, right? You have your P-trap here, holds water to stop that sewer gas from coming up. So here's a little tip as far as if you have a faucet or a bathroom or something like that, you don't use that often. Occasionally run that water to be able to fill up that P-trap, because that sewer gas, that P-trap will dry out. And then all of a sudden you walk in and you're smelling sewer gas because that P-trap is totally dried out. So fill it up occasionally. Some people will put a little vegetable oil, just a little bit, so it floats and it doesn't evaporate quite as easily. I'm not necessarily, I'm like, on that one, but so yeah, P-traps, that's what they're for, and also to catch whatever it is that you drop in the sink, so you can pull these apart and be able to retrieve whatever it is that you lost. With these styles, you can see how they just pull apart. You have a bunch of different styles out there. These are meant to be hand tightened. And I'm going to grab a different piece. You can take that. They're meant to be hand tightened. And the reason is, that one's broke. Don't want that. I'll take this. The reason is that you have these rings, right? And you would have a collar. You'd have one of these. Goes on first, and then you'd have the ring. You can see how that's tapered. It has a taper to it. The easiest way to think about which way it goes is it goes in the direction of the water is going to run, if that makes sense. So, but what happens is that goes around, then your next piece comes in, and that nylon ring is what seals it up. If it's over tightened, what it's going to do is warp. So let's say you get, a pair of pliers out, big pliers, and you reef it down, it's going to warp that ring, and it's going to leak. So generally, what I'll do is I'll have a junk drawer or whatever where I have a couple of these. So like I said, usually 2 sizes. You can see, here it is, how this one is the same style, but I'll drop it. But it's meant for a smaller diameter pipe. So, like I said, if you have that, and you can usually tell what size it is just by looking at it. So, and it's written usually on there also. But on that note, what you want to do is occasionally look underneath, and if you have, usually when they leak, they're going to leak like right here or here or where they connect. And what you do is, if it's leaking, you just grab it and just give it a turn by hand. A little turn, dry it off, let it sit and see if it acts up anymore. Hand tighten it. Just tighten it up. Because especially underneath here, you're shoving stuff in there, whether it's a, kitchen or bathroom, and you're banging into the pipes and stuff, and they can loosen up over time. Usually what I'll do is, you said you just hand tighten it so you're not warping that collar or that sleeve. And then if it still persists in leaking, you pull it apart and you get a new one of those. You can't necessarily tell most of the time by just looking at that sleeve whether it's warped. So, it's one of those things, but don't save them. If you pulled one off, throw it out. And they said they're really cheap. Versus, I said I've seen it where a leak with pipes like this has, a slow drip. They've had a pan underneath it or whatever, rots out the kitchen cabinet or the bathroom cabinet, and then it starts working on the subfloor. And literally a 5-cent piece is what's causing that thousands and thousands of dollars in damage. So it's, keep these. So your drain lines, and then they're going to go into, you got, again, a lot of the homes have PVC pipe. It might be cast iron. In some of the older homes, it might be a mix, right? Similar to the PEX that we were talking about before. So let's say your plumber comes out and they have to do something with your main drain line, and they need to switch it over. So let's say it's cast iron, and they want to switch it over to PVC. They'll use what's called a Fernco like this. Obviously, it's not for this guy. Fit it on for the size, clamp it down, and then transfer over to whatever style of drain line. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So you're saying that your main line is leaking? Okay. Yeah, you can do anything you want. It's that whole thing of, is it easy? It can be, and it can't be. Plumbing is one of those things where sometimes, especially if the older the house, the more aggravating it can be. It's one of those things that sometimes all it is just a simple tighten it up. Sometimes you're getting in and you're having to replace a lot of different things. Yeah, a lot of people, she asked if you can caulk it and that sort of stuff. And how many times I've seen silicone smeared around these or something like that. Does it stop the water? Yeah, it can. Is it right? No. So it's one of those things. In a pinch, Yeah, I mean, if it's a situation where it's like it's really leaking and you need to do something to stop that water, something is better than nothing. But it's not something you want to let progress because again, it can really make a huge mess. Now, how many times I've had to replace subfloors because of a simple little drip. We talk about that, in a lot of other classes too. The acceptable amount of water that comes out of your water lines is what comes out of the faucet, and that's it. Because a little drip is just going to chew up time and money and everything else. So, anyways, your drain goes into your main drain, heads out, whether it's cast iron or PVC. Generally, it goes into about a 4-inch line, something about that size, and then down to the floor and out. You also have what are called vent pipes. So this is your vent stack here. This is usually popping up through the roof. And the easiest way to explain it is the old cans of juice where you had to punch one in. You always had to punch that second hole, right? Because if you didn't, you weren't pouring that juice very easy. That second hole is the vent, right? So it just depends on how the house is set up. Occasionally, you're going to have something that looks like this underneath. And this is usually tucked off in a corner, back up in here, or something like that. They usually put a little higher than this. It may be off in the back. What this is what's called a mechanical vent. I'll pass this guy around. And what that does is it normally stays shut. When your water drains out, it opens it up to let air in through these sides here. You're not going to be able to see it. And it lets air in, essentially that second hole, and then let your water drain out, and then it settles back down so you're not getting that sewer gas coming back up that we were talking about before. If you shake it, you can hear that little valve in there. You can, yep. And what can happen is it's a mechanical device. It can fail. So it's one of those things where it's a bummer when somebody opens up their underneath their sink and they get hit. You'll know when you smell sewer gas, and you're like, whoa. And look in there and see if you see something like that. There's variations on them. They may be black or white, But if you have something like that, sometimes all it needs, give it a couple of wraps, and it may have, that seal may have cocked a little bit, and it's letting that sewer gas come out, right? So sometimes you just tapping it makes it sit down flush. Another one is, if I can have that back, I'm going to show you something. I don't know how many times I've seen this. When you buy this, you can see the air vents, right? And what they have is they have pieces of foam in here when you buy them off the shelf and a rubber band around it. And I've seen that where they forgot to take that off, and it's like, no, that's not going to work. So, sometimes a little wrap or whatever, and that's all it needs. And if it doesn't do it again, fine. If it does, you can replace it. Yeah. Where I can unscrew the thing, take it down to the hardware store and say, I want one of these. Put your putty, this is that Teflon putty. Smear that on there, right? And screw that in. Trick when you're screwing anything in, especially like plastic, PVC, that sort of thing. I turn it counterclockwise a couple of turns just to make sure it seats in there right. You'll feel it sometimes click, so you're not cross-threading it. Thread that on. Part's about $10. Thread that on. Snug it down. I don't reef it down. I just snug it down with that tape or that Teflon paste that helps. And it fixes the problem versus the plumber charging you however much to walk in and go, unscrew that and then grab another one. So yeah, mechanical vent. You're going to see those occasionally. As far as, like I said, your drain lines and stuff, it's usually, like I said, PVC or something along that line. There's not much to them really necessarily. It's just getting that water out. We've talked about this in other classes as far as sometimes you need to keep an eye on like tree roots and whatnot growing into those main drains, whether they're clay pipe or cast iron. Sometimes that root can get in there and totally clog things up. So this is where you may have to call a rotor out or something along that line. They are going to have clean outs. So what I'm talking about with that is usually, if you go in your basement, you're going to see that. Well, this is not it, but it sure looks like it. Something like this, right? And that'd be your main drain line going into the floor, and you may have a piece coming out where it has a cap, and that's your clean out. And you may have a clean out on the outside too of your home. A lot of times there may be a clean out, but it's been covered and buried by whatever over the years. So identifying where your clean outs are in your house can make your life a lot better, because again, if you're paying a plumber $160 an hour to walk outside and go, no, that's not it, that can get pricey quick. So as far as toilets, like I said, we're going to just skim on this one because I'm already running out of time. Generally with toilets, like I said, supply lines and everything else that we were talking about, the parts and pieces inside the toilet, a lot of the new ones are made out of plastic, which is actually kind of nice because it doesn't corrode and whatnot. If you have issues with toilets, what are we going to have in toilet class? You'd bug Jason and those guys and say, we want the toilet class. Because what I do with this is that we actually go through and we replace the common pieces and parts. And it's a hands-on style class, so it's fun. But it's super simple. So a lot of people are kind of intimidated by the toilet, but it's like they usually walk out of the class going, that was easy. That's the point. So we started, 5 minutes late-ish? I got about 5 more minutes, I think. Aerators are another one, whether they're aerators for, bathroom sinks or whatever. You can spin those guys off. They get filled up with crud and whatnot. We've talked about this as far as, sand getting in the line or whatever. So sometimes, make that kind of a yearly thing. Just unscrew it. All different styles out there. Some of the faucets that are sold now come with a little tool because the aerator doesn't stick out. It's all recessed in. So you need this little plastic tool that comes with the faucet, but usually gets lost. So if you ever put in a faucet and it comes with a little blue, funny looking tool, that's what it's for, is to pull that aerator out, because that can drive you nuts. But, occasionally cleaning those aerators out so that they don't get clogged up and stuff. And two, if you're finding a lot of crud in your aerators, usually it means that you have that same crud traveling into your water heater also. And we talked about that as far as sand getting in there or whatever and affecting it and stuff. You buy new styles. Again, the best thing you can do with an aerator, pull the thing off, take it to the store so you get the right size. Because like I said, when you look at them, it's, it's like, mind-boggling. We even have ones like this. It's a, aerator style you can spin around and stuff. So,
what's the job of the aerator?
It's to make it so that it controls, as far as I've always understood it, it makes it so that it's not splashing and spewing everywhere. They even have ones now that have LED lights in them. Isn't that cool? So, is that it? I've never had anybody ask that. I'm sure there's it'll say yes. Because I know when it's off, it splashes all over the place and makes a mess. Right. The main thing, is basically with, any kind of plumbing, anything along that line. Generally, the older the house, the more aggravating it can be. And you want, you just want to keep things nice and snug. You don't want leaks. It drives me nuts when somebody's like, oh yeah, it's just a small leak. So, we said somebody had a sump pump in their basement. Is it just like to deal with rising water or whatever? Okay. Yeah, flooding basement style. Does that thing run occasionally? Yeah, I mean, is it okay? So, oh, okay. So, yeah, that's one of those things where if you have those and you're usually it's one of two things. It's usually A sits there and barely ever gets used and can potentially seize up and whatnot, or is used so much that you really rely on it. So if you have one of those pumps in your basement, and you're using it to kind of rely on pumping that water out so it doesn't flood your basement, you may want to have one of those on hand. So, whatever style pump. I will say that that old adage of you get what you pay for sort of thing. If you want a pump that's going to last, sometimes you're going to end up paying a little more for it. If you go out and buy the cheapest pump, it'll probably for sure fail at the worst possible time, like when you're on vacation or something. So keep that in mind. And you can also have those pumps checked. It's what they do is that they'll read the amperage that it does on startup, and they'll have a gauge where once it gets over a certain amperage, it's ready to fail. So a plumber can look at that and be able to say, it's getting close, So it's if you have those and you rely on that, that might be one of those things, especially if it's getting, in that 10, 15-year range and being used quite a bit. You may want to think about that. So, and I'm over. Is there any questions? No?
Any questions here in the audience?
No.
Last chance. Any questions online? Last chance for you too.
I'm going to add one thing I forgot to mention. Water softeners. If you have, that hard water buildup and whatnot, it really can mess with pipes. It can mess with faucets. It can mess with dishwashers. It can mess with anything that uses water. That hard water can really shorten its life. So all different types of water softeners out there. They are really a godsend. They really help, especially if you're getting a new, let's say, a tankless water heater or something along that line. They're a bit pricey, but you want, soft water going in through them, or a dishwasher or whatever. And, it's a lot of times people don't like the upfront cost, but you think about how much cleaner you have to use to deal with all that line buildup, how much soap you have to use because you're dealing with hard water, and then how much extra money you're spending on just the damage that hard water has done. So you kind of weigh all that, and it's like, oh, it's really not that expensive. So anyways, we'll leave it at that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Sweating a copper pipe is just that, where basically it's they use the solder. So they get the propane page, or MAP gas. They heat it up and they put the solder on the flux. It's not done that much anymore. My wife can do it. So we're working on the basement. But yeah, that's when they say sweating. That's what they're talking about. Yeah, soldering. Yeah. So, but they call it sweating. So, and that's a whole other skill that's can drive you nuts. So that's why the invention of all these push-on styles and all that sort of stuff is so nice, because it takes away a lot of this. And the PEX takes away that also, as far as that time that it takes to be able to sweat those lines. Yeah. It's pretty universal. It really is. Like I said, there are different styles out there. So if you have PEX in your house, you're going to want to know what style it is. And a lot of times, like I said, you can look at the fittings and be able to tell, kind of an older generation versus a newer style generation. So, and if you're not sure, you can always there's usually writing right on it, printing on it and stuff. You can take a picture, take it down to supply house and go, "What is this? What kind of PEX is this?" And they'll be like, "Oh, it's PEX, whatever." So, all right. Well, I've gone way over. Hopefully, you've learned something tonight.
All right. Thank you very much, Lee. I really appreciate your time and teaching us about plumbing systems. Thank you, everyone who is here in the classroom with us, and also those of you who are at home watching. We are doing this every Tuesday night, and we welcome you here in the classroom at 810 Bryant Street. Please check us out online, and you can figure out how to sign up there. But thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.
All right. I didn't even get into insulating the lines.